Rev up your engines!
Donnis D4 says, I understand Jeep's reliability is up in the air. I was wondering, when did it start to drop? I don't want to get Jeeps due to my lack of knowledge of where Jeep's reliability drops. I don't know what year to get. Actually, if you're really going to talk the truth about Jeep's reliability, it started dropping when the Willys Jeep Company sold it to AMC. And then AMC was bought by Chrysler, and they dropped all the AMC vehicles except the Jeeps because they wanted the name Jeep. And then, of course, when Chrysler got bought by Fiat, then the quality went even further down. The absolute worst Jeep, of course, is the Jeep Renegade, which is a rebadged four-wheel drive Fiat 500. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Jeep itself. It's just they're using the name for a Fiat 500 four-wheel drive vehicle. Now, if you don't care about classic vehicles, if you got a 70s or early 80s Jeep, it could still be a decent vehicle. They were pretty much gas hogs, but you can get parts for them. Guys like them, they can drive them around. But any of the late model ones, I mean, the quality has been going down kind of historically ever since Willys Jeep sold to AMC. But it's really dropped when Fiat took over. For a while, it was actually getting a little bit better when it was Daimler Chrysler, because they were putting some German stuff in them. Some had German transmissions in them. But it's mainly been going downhill, especially since Fiat Chrysler. And my prognosis is now that that's bought by Peugeot and it's called Stellantis, I predict it's going to go downhill even further and faster. And Selena says, I'm looking to buy a fun toy car for future purpose. The MR2 Spider seems like a perfect intersection between cost and fun. I noticed they have VVTi engines, and had issues with blowing their engines due to the VVTi. Are the Spiders free of this, or do they share the same fate? The thing about them is, if you don't mind the way they drive and the way they look, with the engines in the back, I've worked on them, and one time I got talked into going on a 100-mile trip in one, and I felt like I was in a coffin because they're thin and straight, and you're sitting in this thing. I didn't feel comfortable at all in a car. Now, if you feel comfortable in a car, go ahead and get one. They're not particularly collector's items, so you can get one relatively cheap. Now, don't go buy one that's got 250,000 miles on it, because it's probably at the end of its lifespan. And being rear-wheel drive, it's got a lot of different things than a normal Toyota, but they were still pretty well built, and you can get parts for them. Get one cheap enough, it could be a good, fun toy. But since you never know with something as old as they are, have a guy like me check it out before you buy it. Don't ever buy a really old car unless a mechanic checks it out. Or unless it's $50 or something, you don't have much to lose and it actually still runs. Even it might not even run for $50. What the heck? It's a good gamble to play around with. Pork Chop Sandwiches says, used to have all 4 Michelins on my Toyota van. They weren't rotated. The fronts needed replacing. I put Continentals on the front, all aired up to 35 PSI cold. But the new Continentals look lower than the Michelins. Doesn't matter. Well, you're always best to have the same tread pattern. But if you've got a normal van, Toyota van, that's front-wheel drive and not all-wheel drive, you could drive it that way. It's just different designs, and the profile of the tires are going to be different. Realize that in your van, it's front-wheel drive. All the driving and stopping is the front tires. And you got brand new Michelins, which are excellent tires. I got 4 of them on my wife's Lexus. There's nothing wrong. You could drive it that way. Now, if it's an all-wheel drive Sienna van, yeah, you would have to put the Michelins in the back too. But on a normal one, they're just rolling down the road, and that's perfectly fine. And they're just different profiles, so they're going to look different. All you care about is the pressure. Don't worry about what they look like. All right, here we go with Chrysler again, not caring about their clientele. I just got an email from a man who says, love the channel, I was watching. September 2019, I leased a new Dodge 1500 from a Dodge dealer. It had only 30-something miles on it. A few months later, the check engine light came on. The service advisor said, did I ever crash it? And I said, no, I just leased it. And they said, well, the warranty's only got 1 year and 2 months left on it. I complained to the dealer. They didn't care. I complained to the Chrysler executives. And they said that, well, your service end date was September 2018, a year before I leased it as a new vehicle. Chrysler said that, take up the issue with the dealer. But they didn't care. Please, Scotty, tell your subscribers. Always call and find out what the service end date is before they sign the paperwork on any new car. Very good advice there. One, it shows that the Chrysler dealer doesn't care. You signed on a dotted line. They don't care. They told them it was new, but had been a demo car for over a year, and that the warranty was almost out. Even though he was leasing the thing, they said, hey, look, this thing's been used for over a year. So if you're going to get something like that, do find when the in-service date is. You might think you got a 3-year warranty. In his case, well, that's like a 1.5 year warranty instead. But at least he was smart and he leased the thing. He didn't buy it, you know? I mean, I always tell people, if you got to get a Chrysler product, lease it. Don't buy it, because then you're not stuck with the pile of junk when it's falling apart. If you can afford the payments, you know what you're going to pay, and there can't be any hidden secret stuff involved in it. But I just go the whole hog myself and not have anything to do with the Chrysler product. You can see how they treated him. They didn't care. The dealer said, go to the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer said, go to the dealer, and they both said, we don't care. Just typical for Fiat Chrysler. Imagine it's probably going to get worse now that the French are involved in its Stellantis. Well, the electric Chevy Bolt, it's coming out with a deal where they're going to be able to have level 2 charging and running level 2 power back into your house. So guess the people in Houston, they got all that cold. If they had a Bolt, they would have been able to plug it into their house and run some stuff. But, and here's a big but, a caveat, their standard procedure for this is only going to allow 7.2 kilowatts. Just an electric heater in a house, a system, a good one, it's running at 20 kilowatt hours. So you couldn't run the heat of your house. You could run a TV, refrigerator, not a bunch of them, but one refrigerator. You'd be able to run a few things on it, but you couldn't run your air conditioner, your heating. Say it was in the summer and there was a hurricane or a tornado, the power went out, you couldn't run your air conditioning system on it. It's not strong enough. Realize those use an awful lot of power, and most of those are running on 220 volts, which uses even more power. So, you know, it's kind of well, it can do some things, but, you know, it can't do a whole bunch of stuff. Don't overreach with what they're saying you're going to be able to use. But it's going to be able to at least do 7.2 at max power back into the house. So you can charge it up faster from the house and send it back into the house. Now, they have higher level ones that you can hook up, but then you got to have everything set up. Like, you'd have to upgrade your house to a 60 amp circuit. That's going to cost you a ton of money. You'd have to have a plug in the wall that could handle 48 amps, which is a pretty strong outlet. You'd have to pay for all that to hook it up. Now, GM does say that they will install a level 2 electric vehicle charger at your house, including an appropriate NEMA 14/50 outlet and labor. Now, they say this is what GM calls standard insulation. I imagine that would end up just like it always does when you see an ad on the internet, or if you're really old and you still read the paper and they say, oh, brake jobs, $39.95. And then there's a little asterisk and there's a tiny little print that says most cars. But then you take your car, and of course your car is never one of the most cars. No, yours is special. This costs more. It's going to cost blah, 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 blah. So don't think that it's going to be free if you do it. Believe me, I know people who've run into that stuff before, and they're not saying who's going to do the work. Obviously, GM isn't going to send people to their house to do it. They're going to farm it out to somebody, and if they're farming it out to somebody, they're probably paying them as little as possible, so those guys are going to have a big incentive to say, well, you got more problems in this house, and I'm going to try to sell you all kind of electrical stuff. So don't be fooled by thinking it's going to be free. And also, like I said, don't be fooled to think you can plug it in, car into the house, you can run your air conditioning and your heating system, because that's not enough power to run all that stuff, especially if it's 220 volts and not 120. The main reason is for recharging a car, because they charge slow as can be with 110 volts. And if they bump it up to 220, you can charge it up a lot faster. That's mainly what it's for. You can run the power back in, but like I say, it's only a limited amount it can do. Now, here's a bit of modern insanity of cars on the stock market. It turns out that Volkswagen is considering putting Porsche out as an IPO on the stock market as an initial public offering, so that they can cash in on the name. You know, as usual, everybody's cashing in on the name. And here's as nutty as it could be. A Bloomberg investor expert says, and I quote, Porsche could stand up to 110 billion euro, $133 billion evaluation in an initial public offering. Roughly 20 billion more than investors value VW presently. It's absolutely nuts. You know, VW owns Porsche, right? But if they put Porsche up as an IPO, it's worth more than they could sell the stock to people. The stock market stuff is getting topsy-turvy. You know, eventually the balloon's going to bust. And then any fool that would buy this Porsche stock would probably lose their shirt. But of course, Volkswagen's thinking, well, let's cash in now before it's too late. Look at Elon and Tesla. This insane valuation, making them the richest man on earth. On paper now. This is on paper. or digital stock, whatever you want to call it. But Volkswagen is actually considering putting Porsche up as an IPO because it's got that name recognition, Porsche. Maybe GM should try with Cadillac, but of course that they can't because Cadillac is already part of GM and it's already being sold on the stock market. The world's really gone insane now that everybody's trying to cash in on the stock stuff before the bubble breaks. Well, take my advice. Don't get involved in the bubble at the present time. Maybe when it blows up and the chips fall, let them fall where they are, then buy the stuff low that might go high. But believe me, buying it now would be a big mistake. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.